So recently I looked into the BBC hit piece on 9/11 Truth. Now Rachel Maddow is taking the reins and going after this full throttle. The media has to, because they've lost all legitimacy, and now they need to attack anybody who looks into 9/11 or any other events. And Rachel Maddow's leading the charge. She attempts to connect 9/11 Truth to terrorism, Al-Qaeda specifically, and also to white supremacy. So I don't know how you can possibly connect white supremacy, Al-Qaeda, and 9/11 Truth, but the media is now attempting to do that. So here's Rachel Mad Cow going nuts.
It's the Boston bombing was really carried out by the government, and 9/11 was really carried out by the government, and Waco and false flags and all the rest, right? Pick your poison. There's always been an appeal to this necrotizing conspiracy theory radicalism, which almost always butts up against justifying violence, justifying some sort of cockamamie, violent, heroic resistance by the select few who are awake and can see the truth, even though everybody else is lulled to sleep. There has always been an appeal to radical conspiracy theories, but now with fewer trusted sources of information in our culture, and with lightning-free global dissemination of anything, there is richer terrain now in our country than there ever has been for all of these nefarious conspiracies about government plots to kill and conspire and lie about it and cover up the real truth. I mean, this stuff is as ridiculous as it has ever been, but it is as ridiculous as it is dangerous. Conspiratorial racist and neo-Nazi groups particularly like numerological codes. And in 2012, after a whole adult lifetime of wallowing in racist conspiracy theories and the insane American movement and nutty fringe subculture that nurtures those theories, the white power movement, and believed in all the same doctrine and dogma and conspiracy theories as the man who committed that massacre, through the racist conspiracy theory fringe movement that one of them lived through and then left. He was intrigued with far-flung conspiracies, they said. He subscribed to newspapers and journals that doubted the Holocaust and described the attacks of 9/11 and Oklahoma City and the Newtown School as plots by unseen elites and by the U.S. and Israeli governments. In caring for this disabled old man with the racist conspiracy theories, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, quote, seemed to have found a kindred spirit. They became friends and had animated talks about politics. A Wall Street Journal reporter recently visited Mr. Tsarnaev's apartment in Cambridge, Mass., and read a stack of newspapers, mostly borrowed from Mr. Larking, that allege nefarious conspiracies. Another one of the newspapers in Tamerlan Tsarnaev's apartment was apparently something called The Sovereign, the newspaper of the resistance, it calls itself. At least in its current incarnation, it seems to be kind of a 9/11 truther thing, all about how secretly it's Israeli lobbyists who control the U.S. government, and it was the U.S. government, or maybe it was Israel, that really did the Boston bombings, and how the IRS scandal reveals that there is Jewish control of the White House. You know, the headline, and I think also in some ways the bottom line, of the Boston Marathon bombing has been that the reason for the bombing was radical Islam, that the bombers were inspired by the online Al-Qaeda magazines. They committed the bombing for the same cockamamie conspiratorial nonsense that we've all had to become so familiar with ever since bin Laden had to become a household name in this country that he attacked. And it does seem clear that the Al-Qaeda brand of conspiratorial nonsense radicalism is part of what drove that act of terrorism in Boston. But if this new reporting from the BBC and the Wall Street Journal is correct, that may not have been the only conspiratorial nonsense radicalism that was at work here. Terror experts say extremist American literature and extremist Islamic readings may reach vastly different audiences, at least most of the time, but the themes are largely the same. Both suggest wide-ranging plots by the U.S. and Israeli governments, that time is running out before an intended apocalypse, and that heroes must act before it is too late. I mean, really, pick your poison, right? It's the Protocols of Zion, or it's 9/11 Truth, or it's what Anwar al-Awlaki sold to Nidal Malik Hassan.
Conspiracy theorists who apparently, when I'm not around, spout all kinds of conspiracy theories. And I stumbled into conspiracy theories in another way. I was walking around the San Jose State campus one day, and I saw a sign, the 9/11 for Truth. I didn't know what that meant, that it was a real buzzword for loonies. Of course, I was in the minority, and I was not very popular, and I almost got shoved down, and a lady said, well, your theory's no better than mine. So they reduced everything to theory, and I've come to the conclusion that you really can't talk to those folks. You cannot reason with them because they are so invested in the crazy story that they've gotten a hold of like a Rottweiler and bitten it and chewed it until it became a really bloody big lie. The better way is to just use the serenity prayer and say, oh, Lord, help me to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I've given up on trying to change conspiracy theorists. They're going to be with us for a long time. One 9/11 anniversary in Shanksville, and a friend of mine put her arm around me and said, just think of them as mental patients. So that's what I do with conspiracy theorists.
The nihilist conspiracy theories, which there are people who are making hay and saying this didn't really happen. Everybody consistently has said you cannot argue with them. That is what they want, and the facts will not convince them. Do you think there is anything other than the serenity prayer that can lessen the harm that they do? I'm worried because with these theories about Boston, I see the pretty mainstream conservative media really flirting with these folks and maybe starting to mainstream some of this craziness, so we maybe won't be able to ignore it.
I know that conspiracy theories work against us in several ways. We've already talked about a few of them. Another serious problem with conspiracy theories is that these two Chechnyan brothers, especially the older one, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, he radicalized himself, and he did that by visiting these various alternative news websites. One of them was Al-Qaeda, that taught him step by step how to make a bomb.
Okay, are we really stupid enough to believe that the U.S. government wouldn't shut down an Al-Qaeda website that's online and teaching people how to make bombs? The U.S. government shuts down websites all the time. They shut down a whole bunch of Syrian websites. Supposedly, Anonymous can shut down all the websites in the world, yet the U.S. government won't shut down a Al-Qaeda website. How is it possible that our government can shut down pretty much any website in the world, yet they would allow this Al-Qaeda website to stick around? It's total bullshit. You'd have to be brain dead to believe it, but some people do.
And I think that conspiracy theorists are making it more miserable for us as we pick and choose our ways of life.
I hear you. Alice, it's the Boston bombing was really carried out by the government, and 9/11 was really carried out by the government, and Waco and false flags and all the rest, right? Pick your poison. There's always been an appeal to this necrotizing conspiracy theory radicalism, which almost always butts up against justifying violence, justifying some sort of cockamamie, violent, heroic resistance by the select few who are awake and can see the truth, even though everybody else is lulled to sleep.